This is TJ Jones, the host of the State of the Saints podcast, and the State of the Saints podcast is brought to you by Manscaped.com. Over 2 million men worldwide choose Manscaped for all their below-the-waist needs. For those that loved the Lawnmower 3.0, well, I got news for you. The Manscaped engineering team has confirmed that they have successfully created the Lawnmower 4.0. The Lawnmower 4.0 gives you the ability to turn the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave. The new trimmer even allows you to customize your trim all through additional guards lengths, sizes 1 through 4. And looks-wise, it's sleek with a two-tone matte and gloss finish, even features a hot foil stamp, black chrome Manscaped logo. Show your more off loud and proud. Go to manscaped.com, use the promo code State of Saints, and you will save 20% off of the Lawnmower 4.0 as well as other Manscaped items. That's manscaped.com. Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones, the host of the State of the Saints podcast. Thank you so much for checking out the State of the Saints podcast, where we talk New Orleans Saints. And on this edition, we got a very special guest with us on the State of the Saints podcast. Many of you who follow on Twitter know this individual. He is the author of the book, Jameis Winston Derangement Syndrome: How Media Bias Calls Us to Overlook the Start of a Hall of Fame NFL Career. And he has been on several shows. He was just on ESPN yesterday with T-Bob Baybear talking about Jameis Winston, and he was kind enough to come on the State of the Saints podcast today. I want to introduce you to Jameis 101. Jameis, how you doing?
Oh, real good, real good. I'm happy to be here.
I appreciate you for being here. And you know, for some of you, the people that may not follow you, you remain anonymous. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, I value my anonymity. I've had, one of Jameis's agents has kind of pushed me to reveal my real identity, but I told him, I said, maybe after I get my PhD, then when I can actually call myself doctor, then maybe I'll do
it. Well, we do appreciate you being here on the State of the Saints podcast. And, let's just go ahead and break the ice here. What made you, start to follow the career of Jameis Winston?
I'm a guy that loves studying quarterbacks. I've been studying and researching quarterbacks for decades. And, I like to start as early as possible. Most of the guys you don't really hear about in high school, or even if you do, especially, before the age of social media, you just couldn't find much information on them. But Jameis, I just happened to catch his first game that he played against Pitt. And right. I was watching it with my son, and that's the game he just went off. It was one of the, the greatest first game performances in college history. And my son and I were watching it together, and I just said, this kid looks like something special. I'm going to follow him and see how his career develops. And of course, that very year, he wins the Heisman and the national title, as a freshman. And so I just started following him all along, studying his career. And I mean, like, I've done that with many quarterbacks, but anybody who's done that realizes most of them flame out. Most of the young phenoms, even the ones that'll have a good freshman year or whatever, they flame out. They don't even make it to the NFL, or if they do, they just, they never develop. Right. But Jameis has just been sort of fascinating to watch his career develop the whole time.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've been watching Jameis Winston. I was watching him in college, and he definitely was a really good college player. I mean, of course, first college football playoff national champion. He was a Heisman Trophy winner, and he was the first pick overall. And that fast forwards us to the NFL. And let's talk a little bit about the book before we get into his NFL career. You said how media bias caused us to overlook the start of a Hall of Fame career. How do you feel like the media is using media bias when it comes to Jameis Winston?
Yeah, it started early with him. I mean, even going back to high school, he's dealt with a lot of things that people don't realize. Death threats for choosing Florida State over Alabama, stuff like that. The media were hating on him early as well. And it's really never stopped. My book gives example after example after example because a lot of people think that I just throw that out there, that Jameis is the most slighted and slandered quarterback by the media in history. And they think that's, just like some irrelevant opinion. But I back it up with facts throughout the book. The book's a monster. It's over 400 pages long. It's backed by over 850 citations. It's not a standard sports book. It's not even really necessarily an easy read. It's jam-packed with data and stuff that you won't find anywhere else. But so one of the things I do is I just look at a lot of, the media headlines and stuff that have followed Jameis even from his time at Florida State before anything even really had happened to where anybody would have a cause to get angry with him. The USA Today ran an article, and I talk about the article and how the article would change if it was written now in 2020 with the political climate the way it is. But they painted him as some sort of criminal, and this is with the squirrel hunting incident, which wasn't illegal, wasn't even against policy or anything like that. There was nothing wrong with it, and Jameis had a gun pulled on him by a cop. Wow. Now imagine if that happens today, that the headlines would be entirely different. It would be something like innocent African-American quarterback has gun pulled on him by police. However, when USA Today wrote the headline back then, 2014, they used it as a tool to just slander Jameis and make him look like some sort of thug. And they actually had to retract that. So this goes way back, and it's never stopped. And ESPN, I would say, is probably, Clay Travis. Clay Travis hates Jameis, and he's one of them. I mean, he and I got into it on Twitter. We had a little statistical debate. I destroyed him, and he had a little meltdown fit, blocked me, and ran away. But so he's really bad. But ESPN as well too as an outlet. I think they decided early on that negative Jameis news sells better than positive Jameis news, and that Jameis makes a good villain for them. Just like in wrestling, you have heels and you have heroes, and I think they just decided Jameis is the heel. We're gonna make a villain out of him, and so every segment basically is negative. Even after the 2019 season, he started a COVID hotline with a doctor in Tampa to help out the Tampa community, and ESPN on the Get Up show ran a segment bashing him. I mean, who does that? How do you do that? How do you do that to a young man? How do you do that to anybody? It doesn't make any sense. Jenna Lane is another one where, she used the birth announcement of Jameis's son to bash him. Wow. It's just never stopped with him. I'm hoping now that he's in New Orleans, with Peyton and the Saints that things will shift a little bit. And I've seen a little bit of a shift in the media, but the Saints aren't exactly a beloved franchise either by the NFL. I mean, it seems like the NFL has been at war with the Saints. And now, the Saints have a quarterback that the media has been at war with for almost a decade. So it's going to be interesting.
When I look at Jameis Winston, I see a guy with a lot of talent. I see a guy with a lot of ability. I don't think you're a first pick overall and not really be good at your position, especially coming out of college. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Jameis Winston statistically. I know that you mentioned a lot of the statistics. Where is it? Can you put up some numbers about Jameis Winston that may shock a lot of people? Maybe some numbers that a lot of people aren't paying attention to validate the fact that you feel he's all pro type quarterback.
Well, yeah, the counting stats are very in favor of Jameis as far as when I wrote the book and I make that claim that the media has caused us to overlook the start of a Hall of Fame NFL career. Right. If all you use is counting stats, the case is extremely easy to make. Jameis is obviously and easily on a statistical Hall of Fame track. Heading into his age 26 season, he just turned 27 now in January. He was number one all time in passing yards, and number 2 all time only behind Marino in passing touchdowns. So he has this massive statistical sort of advantage on quarterbacks of his age, in large part because he was so good so young. He was the number 1 overall pick. He was handed the worst team in the NFL, but he was handed them and told to be the savior from day one as a 21-year-old. You look at Aaron Rodgers, he sat on the bench for years. Drew Brees, sat, then basically was benched for a year for Doug Flutie, et cetera.
Right.
So there's not too many quarterbacks that can match up to Jameis with the counting stats. And those are pretty easily accessible to anybody who goes to Pro Football Reference or ESPN, et cetera. But in my book, I like to break things down on an era-adjusted basis, which basically nobody does because, one, it's a little bit difficult. Two, it sort of goes over people's heads sometimes, but it really helps you kind of put Jameis in perspective. And so I do that by comparing him with every Super Bowl era Hall of Fame quarterback in existence, right? And so I just compare him on all these different statistical levels, adjusting for era. And so it just shows kind of like where he ranks. And people that accuse me of bias or something, it's silly because had I wanted to only be pro Jameis or just paint this flowery image of Jameis, I would have just used counting stats because he looks amazing when you just use counting stats. But I used era-adjusted stats, which actually make him look far worse than what the counting stats do. And yet it shows right where he slots in all these different statistics compared with these other Hall of Fame quarterbacks. And sometimes he'll rank, say, 18th, other times, second or third, sometimes 10th. But it's just a very, logical, unbiased, data-driven approach to showing where Jameis stacks up. And he stacks up very well, even turnovers. People have this opinion that, or this belief that all the Hall of Fame quarterbacks, stepped into the NFL as Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Right.
Drew Brees was garbage early in his career. I mean, absolute trash. He had more career interceptions than touchdowns through his first couple of seasons. Jameis has never even had one single season like that. And then Drew was, benched. He had a span where out of 20 starts, he won 4 games. Drew Brees was 4-16. He was benched for Doug Flutie. He was like 41 years old, a little, and also extremely little short guy. And the San Diego Chargers media were running articles saying Drew Brees, the so-called quarterback of the future, and ripping him. Brett Favre sat for a year, and was traded, of course, by his first team. Kurt Warner was benched by 3 teams. People they have this, they want to give up on quarterbacks quick, or they want to elevate them and exalt them quick. And they have to realize every quarterback, even the ones that are in the Hall of Fame, they all sort of had an up and down path, other than, say, Brady, who just landed in a great situation and was able to game manage himself to Super Bowls and then turn into what he is now. Most quarterbacks, they have a really rocky road, And Jameis is no different. He's had ups and downs, and he'll always be associated with the 30, the 30-30, which, in and of itself is sort of incorrect because it's 33 and 30. It's not 30-30. Right. And my reply to that a lot of times is when people bring up 30, as if it's the only thing you need to say to prove Jameis isn't a good quarterback. My response a lot of times is, would you have preferred that he thrown 1 less interception but 13 less touchdowns? Because that's what Brett Favre did. Brett Favre had a 20 touchdown, 29 interception season, and nobody kills him for it. Jameis had 30 picks with 33 touchdowns, and people act like he should be in the CFL.
It's unbelievable, and I've always, thought that Jameis, was a good quarterback. I even like him coming to, to the New Orleans Saints. And I will say this, as a Saints fan, of course, I wasn't hoping that he becomes successful in Tampa. I mean, the Tampa or rival of the Saints. So, when he was struggling a little bit, I mean, I looked at it as being beneficial to the New Orleans Saints, especially that franchise. But let me ask you this question. What happened in Tampa? What was the main reason why, in your opinion, it just didn't pan out in Tampa for Jameis Winston?
Well, I mean, Brady actually is the reason. So Jason Light and the Bucs, they had a long-term big contract ready for Jameis to sign if Brady said no. It just so happened that the guy that everybody considers the GOAT wanted to be a Buck, and that was all she wrote. So I really, people say, well, had Jameis not thrown the 30 picks or whatever, he'd still be a Buck. No, he wouldn't. Tom Brady not only, represented this massive jump in sort of prestige for the organization, but he's an absolute cash cow. He puts fans in the seats. He sells jerseys. I mean, he financially turned the Bucs around. So even had Jameis gone out there and had a great year, when Tom Brady said he wanted to be a Buck, and he had that connection with Jason Licht going all the way back to their days in New England together, that was all she wrote. The Bucks wanted Brady because Brady brings cachet. So I really don't think that Jameis could have played himself above Brady anyways. So.
Yeah. Well, for all those that are tuning in, that's live, that's in the chat, Jameis 101 is nice enough to answer some of your questions. So if you have a question for Jameis 101, feel free to put it down in the comments. We would love to hear from you. But let's go ahead and talk about Jameis Winston as a New Orleans Saint. Do you think that he can end up being that quarterback that you anticipate him being in a New Orleans Saints uniform?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what he'll do with Peyton, because the one thing with Jameis is that he's so talented that every coach he's ever had has just looked at him like that and sort of trusted him too much and put too much on his shoulders, which is never a good situation for a quarterback. It's what they did, Peyton Manning his first year. And then, Edgerrin James got there and they had a dominant running game, and all of a sudden Manning took off. So, Jameis, you're talking about from 2016 to 2019, where he was basically just asked to gunsling and win shootouts. They had no run game. I mean, I post a tweet a lot of times with an infographic that just shows how terrible the Buccaneers team was, for Jameis's entirety there. And it's dreadful. I mean, they were terrible at pass defense. They were terrible at run defense. They couldn't run the football at all. I mean, nothing was happening other than giving this young man the ball and just saying, sling it, sling it and carry us. And it just doesn't work. And when people bring up, win percentage and things like that, my reply is always the same, and nobody ever answers. They all just run away, including media members that have tried to debate me. Show me another quarterback, especially a young quarterback, but really a quarterback of any age, that won games at a high clip in a situation like Jameis's. And that isn't just some like subjective opinion or some emotional response, because you can actually look at the data and figure out which quarterbacks were in situations like Jameis. It isn't like just, he was in a bad situation. No, the infographic I put out has the exact NFL ranks of everything: pass defense, rush defense, all of it. Show me another quarterback that was in anything like that sort of situation that won at a high clip. There aren't any. So, I mean, expecting him to win. And I will say, even with his, what is he? I think 28 and 42 career record, that's a higher win percentage than multiple Hall of Fame quarterbacks had through their first 70 starts. Dan Fouts, Warren Moon, Frank Tarkin, et cetera. I mean, like, there are some. So going to the Saints, which I consider a world-class organization with a world-class coach, he has the best running back he's ever had in his life, with Alvin Kamara. He has the best wide receiver. I've still got a lot of Bucs fans that follow me and like me and stuff, and they're going to be mad, but Michael Thomas is the best wide receiver Jameis has ever played with. Mike Evans, yes, he's a physical freak. Mike Evans, honestly, and even the data will bear this out, even though most people won't look at it that deeply. Mike Evans isn't as good of a receiver as Chris Godwin. He's not. Mike Evans is a physical freak, though, and that's where his advantage comes. Mike Evans is like the Vince Carter, or Tracy McGrady of NFL wide receivers. He's extremely difficult to match up with. Right. But as far as, drop percentage and yards after the catch and all of that stuff, Godwin has him beat. And I've put up, infographics like that, and people flip out about them. But Michael Thomas, I mean, you're talking about the only wide receiver in NFL history other than Jerry Rice to win Offensive Player of the Year. Wide receivers just don't win that award, and he's got one. So Thomas, in a way, his all-time legacy is like sort of already secure, and I'm excited to see what Jameis can do with him. I will say, Jameis loves the long ball, and I think Peyton will want to utilize that. So I think, Traquan and Deontay Harris, one of those guys, if not both, could really come into play. I don't think Michael's going to get the same amount of catches with Jameis that he got with Drew, because I think Jameis is going to spread it around a little bit more. But I'm excited to see how Peyton utilizes them, and I'm really hoping and praying that Sean doesn't do what every other coach did. He doesn't just look at Jameis and say, "Wow, the arm talent. Wow, let's just throw 45 times a game." I'm hoping he sticks sort of to the plan and lets Jameis kind of play the way Drew played, because I think Jameis can thrive like that.
Yeah. Look, I think that this is a perfect situation that he's in, because one thing that Sean Payton does is, any quarterback that he has, he utilizes their strengths, and then he starts to implement things around their strengths. So I just feel like the way that, Sean Payton calls plays, he schemes guys open, instead of like just, asking, a quarterback to go out there and just sling it down the field. He schemes guys open. So as long as Jameis can, get that ball where it needs to be, I mean, guys are going to be wide open. That's just the way Sean Payton runs his offense. I mean, he's always been that way. And I think that, you go to the Saints of the past before Drew Brees went into the twilight of his career. I mean, they used to spread the ball around quite a bit. So I'm just like you. I'm excited to see what Jameis can do in a Saints uniform. But let's go back to Tampa, okay? Because I mean, I do have some individuals that subscribe to the channel that are Buccaneers fans, and they'll say things like, "Well, if Jameis was all that, why is it that as soon as he left, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the Super Bowl?" I mean, for those individuals, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I wrote an article, a pretty long form article for Sports Illustrated, the Saints site that was published, and it talks about that. Did Brady win with the same team Jameis did? And that article is filled with a lot of stats that I don't have right off the top of my head. But I mean, basically, if you do just look at it like on a name by name basis, player by player basis, they switched out their right tackle, and you're talking about a guy, DeMar Dotson. He was kind of beloved in the locker room, a good dude. He couldn't run block to save his life, and even Bruce, that's not just my opinion. Even Bruce Arians talked about that. Like they would specifically not even run the ball towards the side because he couldn't run block.
Wow.
And so they brought in Tristan Wirfs, who was a revelation. I mean, PFF loves him, of course. I mean, he might be one of the top offensive linemen already in football as a rookie. He was fantastic. That's a huge change. They replaced guys like Dare Ogunbowale at running back for Jameis, and Rojo, who just sat the bench, with a souped up Rojo, for Brady, and Leonard Fournette. So the run game was totally different. Wide receiver wise, Jameis, he had Evans and Godwin, although a lot of people forget. One, Jameis played on a torn meniscus basically the whole season in 2019. He also played with a broken hand for broken throwing hand for a quarter of that season. And during those games, Mike Evans was out the end of the year. He missed, I believe, the last 3.5 games, and Godwin was out the last 2 games. Mm-hmm. So, Brady had Godwin, Evans, Gronk comes in as both a good run blocking tight end and as a pass threat, and Antonio Brown. So on top of that, they added Antoine Winfield, who was a revelation as a safety rookie. So the team wasn't remotely the same, really, as far as their key pieces. And then when you look at the data and the stats and how it affected things, I put out an infographic comparing Jameis's 2019 season and Brady's 2020, and not even bragging, just being honest. It's the best infographic in existence comparing those 2 seasons. When you see, talking head segments on ESPN and Fox and things like that, and they compare players, they usually use 2 or 3 stats. They're generally speaking counting stats that anybody can find in 2 seconds. It's just lazy research, lazy analysis, and they're just goofy stats. So the one that I put out has about 20 different stats filled with advanced metrics, things that, the media just ignores because probably they don't understand them. And one of them is simply, team rush yards per game. Brady got 17.7% more team run support than Jameis. He also got Winston received 25% less yards per attempt as far as team run support. Those are huge numbers that the media hasn't focused on at all. I mean, a quarterback's best friend is a strong running game. And even though, the Bucs they're not going to rank towards the top of the league because they do pass a lot, and Arians likes to do that. The efficiency of their run game and the percentages of their yards per carry and even their yards per game was drastically different, for Brady as compared to Winston. Yep. So I'd encourage anybody to look at that infographic. I've put it out, quite a few times. But so no, Tommy did not win with Jameis's team. He won sort of with a souped up super team, and that isn't even a slight on Brady. That's actually to his credit. I look at Brady the way I look at LeBron. I think he's an amazing team builder. I think that's one of the things that the Bucs got when they replaced Jameis with Brady is they got a guy who was going to bring people with him. And he brought Antonio Brown, a future Hall of Famer, Rob Gronkowski, a future Hall of Famer. Fournette signed up for it, and the team went all in and helped the offensive line in the run game. So, and that is to Brady's credit. A lot of people think because, I like Jameis or I wrote the book on Jameis, I hate Brady. I've loved Brady way longer than I've loved Jameis. I mean, I was, you know, Michigan when Tom Brady was a Michigan Wolverine, I was rooting for him and pulling for him, and I followed his whole career. So I've got nothing but love and respect for Tom Brady, and seeing him win it was cool. You know, I was cheering when Devin White got the pick on Mahomes. So I don't have any hatred at all, you know, for Tom Brady or even the Bucks. But the narrative that Brady won with Jameis's team is ridiculous, you know, and all the stats bear that out. And I would say I just put a tweet out today, you know, for Saints fans that I'm hoping, you know, Saints fans are more logical than Bucks fans, and I'm hoping that the media will be a little more fair with Jameis as a Saint than they were as a Buck, because you know the Saints now they've lost a starting wide receiver, Emmanuel Sanders, tight end Jared Cook, cornerback Janoris Jenkins, linebacker you could even say two with Anzalone and Quan, defensive tackle Malcolm Brown, and now Yamada suspended for 6 games, and their punter, all just from last year's squad. So I'm expecting the media to be, you know, if Jameis, even if he puts up good numbers, if the Saints' record isn't as good as last year, I'm expecting them to say, "See, he couldn't win with Drew's team." It's not the same team. You're talking about 8 starters are going to be different, so it's not the same team.
Yeah. But I think the media down in New Orleans, they're a little bit more patient than like some of the media members out there. You know, they have a level of understanding, but you do have those individuals like you mentioned, you know, that are victims of media bias, and that warps their opinion about Jameis Winston. You know, some of the things that they hear, you know, and it being amplified, and all of a sudden you're hearing that at 11 o'clock, then you're hearing it on a 2 o'clock show, then you're hearing it at the 5 o'clock sports center, and eventually it gets crammed into your head and goes into your subconscious, and you begin to develop these thoughts and these feelings about a guy, and honestly, you didn't even come to that conclusion yourself. It's just constantly being fed to you. It's almost like a song that you're not sure that you like, right? But you play it on the radio over and over again, eventually you'll probably keep it on the dial a little bit longer or find a reason why you like the song. But we're going to go ahead and go to some of the questions that he had. We're going to start with Jerry Poor. Jerry says he wants to know, do you feel that Jameis will be quarterback number 1 in 2021, 2022? His answer is yes. What do you think? I think I know the answer to this, but let's just answer Jerry's question.
Yeah, I mean that's the plan. And you know, if people have been following me for a while, you know, I did a lot of interviews on Barstool and things like that, and put out a lot of tweets. And people would ask me. I actually did an interview with Barstool. I want to say it was probably 4 or 5 days before Taysom was named the starter when Drew went down.
Right.
And I basically spelled it all out that was going to happen in advance without saying it so much. And then, you know, Taysom was named the starter, and I believe it was their producer, Stephen Che. He kind of came at me and he was like, "Ha ha, you know, you thought Jameis was going to start." And I was like, "Bro, go listen to the interview. I told you guys what was going to happen before you happened. You just didn't follow the breadcrumbs."
Right.
And so, you know, Sean Payton was very honest with Jameis, very upfront with Jameis, and I think that I think Sean deserves nothing but respect, because Jameis came from a situation in Tampa where the exact opposite happened. The GM allowed him to take bullets for the organization that he really shouldn't have taken. Jameis is a yes coach kind of kid, so he took some bullets for light that he shouldn't have. There was something that happened before the London game specifically, and that's, you know, some people would say is one of Jameis's worst games of his career. There was something that happened before that game that Jason Light probably should have made aware to the media, and he didn't. Jason knows me. Jason, you know, came on the Barstool interview that I was on to sort of prove to the world that he and I weren't the same person, because a lot of people thought I was the Bucks GM. So Jason knows me. He used to like me. Now he's got me blocked because he knows where I know where all the bodies are buried in Tampa, and there's a lot of things that he let go on that shouldn't have happened. There's a lot of bullets he let Jameis take that he should have taken, but he let Jameis take him to preserve his own job security.
Wait. Let me ask you this: would you care to share what the situation was leading to London that caused him to have one of the worst games of his career?
That's the one I can't talk about, and I've specifically been asked not to talk about by Jameis's family. And
okay, fair enough.
Yeah, and like, you know, Light knows the issue as well. And then with Arians, you know, Bruce is a good coach. He is a good coach, and I've even said after the Super Bowl, I said, Bruce has a Hall of Fame resume now. You can't really argue with that. He's a 2-time coach of the year, and he's got a ring as a head coach. He's got multiple rings as an assistant. So I don't have any hatred for Arians, and I'm very logical in the way that I speak about him. But he's also a diva and a snake, and he lied to Jameis. He slandered Jameis throughout the coaches' meetings. And I have that from, direct people who are in the coaches' meetings at ESPN that have talked with me. Bruce just went around slandering Jameis and telling coaches to stay away from him because in the Bucs' mind, if Brady wasn't going to be a Buck, they wanted Jameis back. They had that contract ready for him, and they did not want any other team making an offer. The Raiders were one team that wanted in on Jameis, but thought for sure he was going to be a Buck. They signed Mariota early. They didn't think Jameis was going to hit the market. By the time Jameis hit the market, the Raiders were off the board because they had already signed Mariota and they had Carr. So Jameis was done dirty in Tampa. I mean, he really was. And Bruce Arians still deserves to be in the Hall of Fame as a coach, but as a human being, yeah, I'm not all that high on him. So Sean Payton, on the other hand, has been nothing but honest and upfront. Jameis knew the situation going in. He knew that Taysom had been promised the ability to start if Drew went down. So when Taysom was announced the starter, that didn't affect Jameis at all. It didn't bother him at all. And if you go back and read my tweets, then I wasn't upset in the least. I mean, I knew that was happening, and it was perfectly cool with me. Going into this season, though, is an entirely different ballgame. I do believe that Sean is planning to, unleash Jameis. That it is sort of a Mahomes, Alex Smith type situation where Andy Reid had Mahomes sitting on the bench, and everybody knew he had the bigger arm. He was more talented. But Alex was doing his thing. He was very efficient, a great game manager. But that next year, Andy unleashed Mahomes on the league. So I do think that's what Peyton's planning. Now, anything could happen. I mean, injuries could happen, stuff like that. Taysom could come out there and just be entirely different. He could have completely improved on everything. I mean, I don't know. And if he does, more power to him. If he deserves to win it out and he's become great. But if it's, the Taysom from last year, who statistically I compared with Tebow, and there really was a good comparison there. People didn't like it, but I wasn't really insulting him. It's just there was a good comparison there. So if Taysom's the same guy that he's been, at BYU and to the Saints so far, and then you've got Jameis, who has Hall of Fame talent. Whatever you want to say about him, he has Hall of Fame talent, and nobody that knows football would disagree with that. Yeah. So. And I also think that Taysom is an amazing Swiss Army knife dude. In my mind, having Jameis and Taysom on the field at the same time will cause defensive coordinators nightmares because Taysom's awesome, and I don't view him as a pure quarterback, but he's an awesome football player, and I would love to see them on the field at the same time. You put them in the red zone with Jameis at quarterback, Taysom behind him, Alvin out there. I mean, how do you defend that? I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I think that Sean Payton is salivating at this moment right now. Like all of the endless possibilities he have between these two guys. But I definitely feel like Jameis is going to be the number one quarterback come week one. Gonna go to John. John says he would like to know about the crab leg incident. Did the media blow that out of proportion? Did it really even happen the way they said it did? You care to share about that?
Sure. I have a chapter in the book called Troubles in Tallahassee, and it just deals with every single incident, sort of that the media covered, and it's loaded with citations and, I mean, just everything. As far as the crab leg incident, I would just encourage anyone to actually go watch the security footage. Nobody shows it. The media always talks about Jameis stole crab legs. Nobody ever shows the footage. You can go online. I believe it's still there. I have it linked in my book. You can go online and watch the security footage. It's like Jameis clearly walks up, an employee puts the seafood tray on the thing for him. Jameis picks it up, takes it, holds it out in full view of himself, slowly meanders throughout the store, even backtracks to look down another shelf for things, and slowly walks out the door with it in full view. What criminal does that? Who's stealing an item does that? There's no attempt at concealing it. There was no, taking it from something. The employee put it there for him. And then when Jameis gave the interview with Jim Harbaugh leading up to the draft, Harbaugh asked him about that. And Jameis said, "Hey, man, what do you want me to do? You want me to throw my friend under the bus?" I took responsibility. That's what I do. And Jim kind of pressed him on it, and Jameis said, yeah, it was a hookup. I got a hookup from an employee, but I'm not going to throw the guy under the bus. And Jameis's whole history, kind of points to that. You watch his interviews. I've pretty much watched all Jameis's interviews, throughout his career. And he never throws a teammate under the bus. He never throws a coach under the bus. I remember him after, some terrible games saying Dirk Cutter was a genius. I mean, really? Dirk Cutter doesn't belong in the NFL. He was not a genius. But Jameis says, oh, my coach is a genius. I remember another game where the center, Ryan Jensen, and I love Ryan's dad. I get along with him really well. So I'm not trying to be mean to Ryan, but Ryan snapped the ball at Jameis's face when Jameis wasn't even looking. And at the end of the game, at the post-game press conference, the media asked him about it, and Jameis, oh, it was a perfect snap, totally on me. And there's just a lot of stuff like that where Jameis is that prototypical quarterback. His dad raised him the right way. Jameis takes responsibility for things that really have nothing to do with him. He just does that. So what he told to Harbaugh matches up with what you see on the security footage. Is that he got a hookup, and then he just took responsibility for it so the employee wouldn't get fired or blamed. And I've said that to people, and some people will concede, okay, fine. But still a hookup is stealing. And I said, no, it isn't. The hookup, the responsibility of the hookup is on the employee. If my daughter works at McDonald's and tells her friends, when you come in, I'll give you a free ice cream, it's on my daughter to then reimburse the business for the ice cream, not the friend. The friend is taking it on the advice of the employee. So, in any situation, I don't see it was an issue. But the media, of course, blew it up as a huge issue, and it's never died. The memes and the jokes are still out there. It never goes away. And you were dead on when you brought up the media and how things are. A Malcolm X quote that I love is, the media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. And that's power, because they control the minds of the masses. And once you get something in your head, it just becomes part of what you think, whether you want to or not. It just does. And so I see it so often where I'll put stats out there, or I'll put facts out there, or truth out there, even this security video. And the cognitive dissonance people have when it comes to Jameis is insane. They literally can't handle this new truthful information because it conflicts with the false information they believe is true. And they just have meltdowns and freak out. And it's wild. It's wild.
If anybody just wondering or saying, this isn't true. Just take a look a couple of days ago with the situation with Richard Sherman, right? Just the way that they actually set that situation up. First, they said that, the police were looking for him for a hit and run. Now, when you think about hit and run, what's the first thing you think about? You think about a person like in a car running somebody over and leaving and fleeing the scene, right? But what happened was he actually hit a guardrail and left and left. So it just stuff like that. So if you, let's just say, for example, you did not read the article, you will be telling your friends, man, Richard Sherman hit somebody. He left, it was a hit and run. It's just the way that they actually spin things to create the narrative. And I do feel like there's a lot of individuals out there that they focus on, maybe because those individuals are polarizing, or they feel like, they create ratings, by just talking about them or just looking at them in a negative light. Cause maybe, I don't know what's going on, but I do feel like there's a bias, and that's something that I try to pride myself not to be. I rather just be, individual that try to give it to you straight instead of just, trying to create this narrative. It is what it is, but I don't feel like they need to create this, this bias towards individuals in order for you to care about them. I think that his game should speak for itself. I think that his skill set should speak for itself. And hopefully now that he's in New Orleans, people will give him a fair shake. But let's go to Derek. Derek says, salute to you, Jameis 101. You're a real one to stand up to the media for what's right and calling the haters out on the BS. Jameis was put in a no-win situation, set up for failure in Tampa Bay. Nothing but respect for you, TJ. You're a real one also. I appreciate that, Derek. And, there are a lot of players out there that are, victims of scrutiny, Jameis 101. But to you, what makes Jameis so different from all the other players out there? Why is it that you feel like they just pick on him more so than some of those other players? Can you hear me? I think I'm having some connection issues with Jameis 101.
Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? I can. If you can hear me, just hang up and dial back in, and hopefully that'll set it back up. We're having a little bit of connection issues. We're here with Jameis 101. We're having a little bit of connection issues right here, but in the meantime, while he's if he's dialing back in, go ahead and read some of these comments. I got so many free Whoppers when my boy worked at Burger King. I mean, look, everybody had a hookup every now and then, man. Shouts out to my best friend, Chris Smitty. He used to work at the grill at Jackson State University. And yes, you know what I'm saying? I used to roll over there around 6:30, 7 o'clock in the evening. And you know what I'm saying? I used to like load my plate up full of hot wings and fries. You know what I'm saying? Like, so everybody got a hookup every now and then, but that goes to show you right there how real Jameis is. You know what I'm saying? How much of it, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's willing to sacrifice, you know what I'm saying, his own credibility to save somebody else, because I guess he realized, okay, man, I know where my career is going. I know what's going to happen for me. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to throw this person under the bus. And, you know, man, that's a real one right there. You know, that's a real one right there. I'm gonna try to get Jameis 101 back. I'm gonna just go ahead and play this little break real quick from this message from Manscaped, and we'll be right back.
This is TJ Jones, the host of the State of the Saints podcast. And the State of the Saints podcast is brought to you by Manscaped.com. Over 2 million men worldwide choose Manscaped for all their below-the-waist needs.
Okay, I think we got Jameis 101 back. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you good now.
Okay. I apologize for that. Have a little bit of connection issues. Read a few more of these comments, and then I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Just read maybe like two. Let's see. Ryan says, do you think Jameis Winston could be another Bo Jackson playing two-sport football and baseball? Well, you know, he did have a really good career as a baseball player, and also he's really good at football. Do you remember at any time Jameis Winston considering playing two sports, or maybe baseball more so than football?
I mean, I know he'd love to. You know, I mean, he loves baseball. I know he'd love to do it. I mean, I don't personally think it'll happen. But he is good enough. I mean, like, he was drafted into Major League Baseball. He probably would have been drafted even a lot higher, you know, had he not played football. And he was always split in time. A lot of people don't realize that. I mean, he never was able to, you know, just dedicate himself to being a quarterback until he got into the NFL. He was always split in time. So yeah, I mean, you know, it's possible if he was to I don't know, if it was a Warren Moon situation where the NFL just kind of like shoves him off to Canada, I could definitely see him playing Major League Baseball. But hopefully that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that's going to happen. You know, I think that he's going to have a solid season, a solid career for the New Orleans Saints. I think he's going to be a really good talent. And the final question is, you know, this is something that, you know, that a lot of people probably are wondering, you know, like they're wondering to themselves, you know, why is he taking up for Jameis Winston? Like, what's in it for him? Like, you know, are you in any way, you know, affiliated with the family? Did the family put you up to, you know, you know what I'm saying, to like counteract the media when it comes to Jameis Winston? Like, you know, feel free to answer that question. Did the family of Jameis Winston put you up to any of the things that you're doing and books you're writing about Jameis Winston?
Okay, sure. Now that's actually a sort of a fascinating story. So I had never met, talked with, or anybody connected to Jameis at all when I decided to write the book. Never. He simply was just a fascinating quarterback. And, you know, it's not like I only defend him with data and sort of truth against false narratives. I've done that with Matthew Stafford, for example, actually going all the way back to Georgia. Like I've been sort of a Matthew Stafford defender for a long time, and I still am. I defended Matt Ryan for a Super Bowl performance, just based on data. And that's not an easy thing to do because people think he choked it away. So Jameis was just fascinating to the point where I did a lot of research on him. And I had fun sort of interacting with the media and fans about him. And it just kind of snowballed into a book. I had so much information that one day I was just writing an article for a little indie media outlet in Tampa. And as I'm writing the article, I'm looking at all the data I have and stuff, and I'm like, this could just be a book. I mean, 5-6 page articles, fine, but I could easily write a book out of this, and it's fun for me. So that's really when I started doing it, with absolutely no connection whatsoever to anybody in Jameis's camp. Once I wrote the book, and it kind of, it started getting some press, and some people started talking about it even before it came out. So people kind of got nervous about it coming out. People in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization. And actually, 2 of Jameis's agents got a hold of me, and they were nervous because they figured it would be a hit piece, and because everything really to date that had been written about Jameis, it was always sort of a hit piece. And he had even given interviews where, they would tell the family, oh, this is going to be a really nice look at Jameis, and it would turn out to be a hit piece. And so his agents were worried that, here's this anonymous author that they don't know who I am, and I'm going to write a hit piece. And so they contacted me, and, I assured them it wasn't a hit piece. It was data driven. It isn't, it's just going to be what it is. I mean, like, you're not really going to be able to argue with it because it's irrefutable. There might be some sections that you don't like, but I really don't care. I'm going to write what I want to write. One of his, and when I say agents, he has a lot of them. So it's not just a football agent, but one of his agents actually did not really get along with me at all, kind of threatened me. And, I'm happy to say that that person is no longer employed. But, so, yeah, my thing was that, I was going to do what I wanted to do. I was going to write what I wanted to write. And then we'll see what happens. Now, after the book was published, or actually just leading up to it, I was put in contact with his trainer, Otis Leverett, who's, been a trainer and mentor for Jameis, going all the way back, way before college. Right. And I spoke with him, and he's a fantastic guy. His wife's fantastic. I mean, that whole family's great. And he wrote the foreword for the book, and in it, he kind of talks about like a John the Baptist and Jesus situation. It's a very cool foreword. And like, it really is. I'd encourage anybody to read the foreword because it's fantastic. And Otis is an awesome guy. So I had that connection. And then it really wasn't until after the book came out and was published where I sort of, kind of was put in contact with like his dad, for example. And so now, yeah, I have a great relationship with his family and all that. But I definitely didn't write the book like with them telling me to. I mean, they had zero, influence whatsoever on what I wrote, and still have zero influence whatsoever. And I think you've told me you've talked to Jameis's dad, and so, yeah, I mean, and you can ask him directly. I mean, he'll tell you, nobody tells me what to write, and nobody tells me what to say. And now he may agree with every single thing I write and say because it's all the truth anyways, and I do. I mean, I love Jameis's dad. I think he's amazing. But yeah, I'm not on the payroll, nothing like that. A lot of people thought I was on the Bucs payroll, and I know some people inside the organization and all that, but no, I was never on their payroll either. People thought I was, the Bucs GM, Jason Light, because like defending his pick of Jameis. But it was never anything like that. I'm actually an Orthodox Christian theologian. Most of my writing is theological. I also do a lot of other writing and stuff. But I just like studying quarterbacks. And the book, even if you're not even a Jameis Winston fan, like the book is fascinating because it looks at all the Super Bowl era Hall of Fame quarterbacks and compares them with each other. So even if you're not a Winston fan, like you can compare Ken Stabler on an era adjusted basis with Terry Bradshaw. And Terry Bradshaw with Dan Marino and stuff like that. So it's just kind of a fascinating look at the history of Super Bowl era Hall of Fame quarterbacks. And Jameis just happened to be an awesome character study. And so, the fellas at Ralph Marlboro and Andrew Juge, they say, well, you love Jameis more than Jameis's family loves Jameis. and I said, no, I mean, as a Christian, like I love everybody, and I defend a lot of different quarterbacks and stuff with truth. So yeah, of course I love Jameis, but I love everybody, and the truth and the data just speaks for itself, and it counteracts the false narratives that the media puts out. When you were talking about the Richard Sherman thing, it's very true. Tupac is that's like my guy. I consider him the GOAT, as far as rap goes. And he has that famous, and I use the meme a lot. He has that famous one where he's sitting there in front of I think he may even be in a prison. I'm not really sure, but he's sitting there and he just says, "Trust nobody." And that's kind of the way I look at it. I don't trust the media at all. Like, if the media is saying it, I'm automatically leery of it. And I want to look into what they're saying and why they're saying it. And when you look at Jameis, it makes no sense that all of a sudden, overnight, all the media would just decide, okay, he's a bad guy, he's this, he's that. Let's just start crushing him in all segments. Let's even crush him based on his play and based on starting the COVID hotline, blah, blah, blah. That makes no sense. Like, that's an orchestrated effort.
Hit job.
It's a hit job. It's an orchestrated effort to just destroy a kid. It doesn't make any sense. And then you see some media would stand up for Jameis, and then they'd never be invited back. Like, you'll notice when they do segments on certain players, they'll always bring in the same guys. And it's because those guys will have a connection to them and stuff like that. Well, they did a segment on ESPN, and I want to say this was in 2016, but I might be off on that. But Tampa, there was a hurricane that had gone through Tampa, and Bucks players were freaked out. And the Bucks owners, the Glazers, offered to just fly Jameis and his family out on their private jet. And Jameis said, "No, I'm not going until you fly out the whole team. I want all the teammate and their families flown out too." And Mark Schlereth brought that up on a segment about Jameis and his leadership. And, the other panelists were kind of bashing Jameis, and Schlereth brought that up. And I was like, okay, this is great. Hopefully they'll bring him back. Now, I have never seen them ever have Schlereth on again when they do a segment on Jameis. and I have had, ESPN employees, they know what's going on, and they know what has happened with Jameis in the media. And they've told me, we're not going to say anything. We're not rocking the boat. I mean, they get a paycheck, So I would just encourage everybody, never trust the media. Always, look into what's being said. Always check the data. You've got some guys in the media will just flat out lie, look straight into the camera and lie to their audience because they know their audience won't fact check them. Max Kellerman was one of these dudes. Max Kellerman's extremely intelligent. He can debate at a high level. Most guys in the media, they can't even debate. Like, they lose to a ninth grade debate team. They don't know how to debate. All they know how to do is give opinions and sort of, speak emotionally. Right. But Max Kellerman can actually debate. And yet he relies basically on the fact that his audience won't fact check him to just spew lies. And he'll go out there. He's talked about Jameis recidivist behavior. He'll use some words like that and just think, well, nobody will check it out. Okay, Max Kellerman's the guy who was suspended by ESPN for slapping his fiance.
Wow.
And Jameis Winston has never even been arrested in his entire life, let alone convicted of a crime. So what recidivist behavior is Max talking about when the kid's never been arrested, never been convicted of anything? There isn't any. And Max is another guy. He'll go out there and he'll praise a guy like Dak. And I'm not killing Dak. I hope all the best for Dak Prescott. But he'll praise Dak, and he'll say that the best way to judge a young quarterback and to know whether you should praise them or not is to look at what they do on third downs and in the red zone, because those are the highest leverage moments. Like, this is all Max's talking points.
Right.
And then Max will turn around and call Jameis Winston both the most overrated quarterback in the NFL and one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. That in and of itself is illogical and doesn't make any sense. But Max will say that knowing full well Jameis Winston is the third down god of the NFL since entering. And this is not an emotional statement. I put the data out. Since entering the NFL as a 21-year-old kid on the worst team in football, he ranks number one out of everybody in third down conversion rate. Out of everybody. The only guy that you could put ahead of him is Mahomes, and that's only if you lower the sample size really low, because Patrick hasn't had as many snaps. But Jameis is number one. And then when you look at the red zone, Jameis has a better career touchdown to interception ratio than Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, like almost anybody in the red zone. And these are where decision-making is at its paramount. These are the highest leverage moments, third downs in the red zone. So if Jameis is a third down and red zone god, how does the narrative fly that he's some dumb quarterback and bad at decision-making? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So another quote that I use, and I use it in my book, and I've used a lot of times. I've had media block me just over using it, but it's a quote from United States President Harry Truman, and it says, quote, "We have men in this day and age who are prostitutes of the mind. They sell their ability to write articles for sale, which will be so worded as to mislead people who read them. skillful purveyors of character assassination. And that's the media in a nutshell. That's mainstream sports media, just like mainstream political media. They're all just spinning narratives and selling stories, and they don't care about the truth.
Yeah, because they know that people have invested time in them, and they want to believe everything that they say. And that's why I always say, once you reach a certain level, you really find out who a person and what a person is really made of, who they are and what they're really made of, because it's powerful, right? Like when you have put yourself out there and people have, they follow you and they listen to you. And there's a responsibility when it comes to that. Like you can't just be out here like just giving people nonsense. Some people will do that because they feel like regardless of what they do, people are going to follow them. But the ones that I have a lot of respect for and I admire is the people that understand that they do have individuals that follow them, but they want to take it upon themselves and they look at it as a responsibility to give those people exactly what they need. That's why, one person I look up to is Dan Rather. I'm a little bit of historian, Walter Cronkite, individuals that I've seen, that are willing to put themselves out there. And sometimes, the people behind the scenes don't like what they said, but they felt like the public needed to know because they had a responsibility. Those are the people that I have a lot of respect for, not so much about the individuals that you're referring to there. But I'm going to go ahead and put the book up here, Jameis Winston, Derangement Syndrome, How Media Bias Causes Us to Overlook the Start of a Hall of Fame Career. Jameis 101, we definitely got to get you back on the show, maybe like a little bit when the season starts, to talk a little bit more about Jameis Winston and his progress. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for answering some of the questions from the Who Dat Nation. And, look forward to hearing from you on Twitter as well as, on some of these other shows. Keep exposing these people, man, because they need to be exposed, my friend. Thank you.
I'll look forward to it. You mind if I say one thing real quick?
Yeah, go ahead. And also,
Okay.
your Twitter. I forgot to mention it. Yeah, make sure you plug your Twitter and stuff like that also.
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, for my Twitter, it's just at Jameis101. I mean, probably 3-4 days a week I get into it with some media member or some fan, and have a good debate. Today it was Sam Monson from PFF. He tweeted some nonsense out about Jameis, and I kind of snowballed him with some data and hit him with some facts, and he quickly said, well, I'm not going to respond to you. You called me goober. And ran away. And I said, bro, I've had people come at my wife, my children. I get some of the nastiest DMs ever. And I have no problem just talking to everybody and debating with people. So yeah, if you want to run away because I use the word goober, which is just funny, go for it. But
and I also got to say, bravo. And you all have to, like, if you're on Twitter, please follow him, Jameis 101. That Barstool interview, like when you were like completely like just throwing stat after stat and just throwing these analytics out, like they really did not know what to do. The guy was like, oh, this guy has too much time on his hand. Like when people start saying stuff like that, you automatically know like they just full of crap, to be honest with you, because they really don't have anything to say. It seems like they were prepared to talk about Jameis Winston's not that good. And then when you start throwing facts at him, they tried to discredit you and made it seem like, oh, he's just a nerd. But listen to what he's saying. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I want to say bravo for that interview because you really kind of, destroyed them on that one.
I have fun doing it. And I've made some good friends now with some of the guys at Barstool, but you're right. I mean, they were all anti-Jameis when I came on there. I mean, they hated him. And now, quite a few of them like him and they'll back him, although, they're comedians too. So they'll get a little weird. Yeah. But I did another interview in Tampa where I didn't know these people. Like I don't even live in the States. I wasn't born in the States. I don't live in the States. So I don't know a lot of the, localized media. And I had a producer get a hold of me from a radio show in Tampa. And he said, oh, we're huge Jameis fans and we love your book. We want to get you on. And I was like, okay, cool. I get on. The producer and the host both hate Jameis. Hate him. They told me they wanted to talk stats in my book. They didn't want to talk either one of those. All they wanted to talk about were incidents at FSU. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, this is an ambush. But that's one of the first interviews I ever did. And like, I completely shut them down because, I had my book next to me. I had all the citations. I hit them with, actual court documents, stats, like everything. And they just sat kind of silent. And at the end, they were like, yeah, I mean, I guess you kind of changed our minds. So, I mean, I have fun with it. And on Twitter, yeah, I get into a lot of like really fun ones. I had a back and forth with Bruce Arians' son. And he flipped out, he started swearing at me and got all mad. And then his wife jumped in and, it was fun. But I try to always handle myself really well. The one thing I was going to say here is I see a comment on the side, Tylenol Jones, 5:03 p.m. says, Jameis is generally one of my heroes as a young Christian, such an incredible role model. I will say, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'm very controversial. A lot of the media can't stand me. But you can search, I got like 50,000 tweets. I never curse at anybody. I try to handle myself the right way. I have fun clowning clowns, and I don't mind calling people goober, illogical stuff like that. Right. But I try to handle myself well. And, even as an Orthodox Christian theologian, like Jameis Winston himself and the way he carries himself, it actually really impresses me. I don't think I would have, I don't think I'd have the character to handle the media the way he does. I look at, we were talking about Max Kellerman. Max Kellerman, crushes Jameis just routinely as if he's paid specifically to do that. And Jameis treats all these media with kindness. Like, he really does. I mean, like, he was good to all the media in Tampa, even though he knew they had hit pieces written about him and just waiting to publish. And even though he knew they were lying to his family, blah, blah, all this stuff. Max Kellerman did one negative segment on Derek Carr. And Derek Carr is known as like a good young Christian man too, family man. Right. Derek Carr lost his mind and wanted to fight Max Kellerman. Derek Carr flipped out. Baker Mayfield flipped out on Colin Cowherd. None of these quarterbacks in the NFL get put through what Jameis does. None of them. And yet Jameis just treats everybody with kindness and love. He's always smiling. He's always positive. Like, it's pretty inspiring. It really is. Yeah. So, I just hope Saints fans can get behind him, and can stay behind him and actually, root for the kid, pray for the kid, hope the best for the kid, because he uses his money the right way. He uses his time the right way. He gives back to the community. He's a good kid. He really is. And I hope everybody can get behind him in New Orleans, because he never really got that support in Tampa. Yeah. The day he was drafted, his own local media, Tampa Bay Times, wrote an article, something like, want him or not, now you're stuck with him. I mean, it was ridiculous. And they were always just ready to rip on him, and they wanted to run him out of town, from the day he got drafted. So I really hope that that Nolans is backs him and smart enough. They got a coach that people hate on. People hate on Sean Payton, but New Orleans backs him, and they should. They got an organization people hate on, but they back him, and they should. And I hope they look at Jameis that same way.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely a Jameis Winston supporter. I know a lot of individuals that check out the State of the Saints podcast, they're Jameis Winston supporters. And hopefully after today, those that checked out this podcast are on board and become a Jameis supporter as well. Jameis 101, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And we'll see you down the road. Take care.
My pleasure, brother. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Jameis 101. Man, that was a great interview right there. Good stuff. I hope that some of you learned a little bit more about Jameis Winston than you may have known. The book, I'm going to go ahead and put that out here once again. Jameis Winston, Derangement Syndrome: How Media Bias Caused Us to Overlook the Start of a Hall of Fame NFL Career. So y'all make sure y'all check it out. It's available. You can go ahead and Google it and find out how you can get your hands on the book. And let's just give Jameis Winston an opportunity, man. Let's give him an opportunity to change the narrative about, what we think about him. If you're on the fence about Jameis Winston, let the NFL season play out. All right. Give this man an opportunity. This has been the State of the Saints podcast. I ask everybody to give the show a golden thumbs up if you like the interview, if you like the show. We'll be back later on. Hopefully, I'll be able to do another show. Want to focus a little bit on the David Onyemata situation. Of course, we know that David Onyemata has been suspended for 6 games. We want to talk a little bit more about that and what that actually means for the New Orleans Saints. Also, there was an interview that I conducted with the new voice of the New Orleans Saints, Mike Haas, that's available right now. That one came out a little bit earlier today. I sat down a little bit. That was a dream come true. I felt like a young kid sitting on the floor in my grandmother's den at the age of 5 watch him. I watched Mike Hoss like my entire young life, and had the opportunity to talk to him about being able to call the Saints games and what it actually means to him. So that's available on the YouTube channel as well as on Facebook, on a Facebook page. And also subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com, search The State of the Saints Podcast, facebook.com, search The State of the Saints Podcast, and previous episodes available on Anchor FM, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio. And of course, the State of the Saints Podcast is brought to you by manscaped.com. Go to manscaped.com for all your male grooming needs. Use the promo code State of Saints, that's State of Saints, and you will save 20% off of your purchase. Thank you all so much. Enjoy your afternoon, because we're recording this on the afternoon. Enjoy your morning, noon, and night, wherever you are right now. And like always, all I got to say